Good evening. I was very amazed the last meditation, the last sit we did at 4 o'clock. How quickly you all just sunk into it. Hardly any instructions. For the guys who had to get up early before the hour, let me console you. For some strange reason, us guys have more bodily aches than the women folk somehow. And we all get up earlier than the women folk. I don't know why, but it happens. But still, I must say, you guys are doing great work. Obviously very motivated, very diligent. When Ajahn Brahm sits up here in the evenings, he'll have a basket full of little notes that ask him questions, and he'd be answering questions for 2 whole hours before the end of the night. And here you guys are so contented and peaceful, which is wonderful. Obviously, you have got a few factors already established in place, but I would like to point them out so that when you go back and do your meditation at home, when you find your own cushions, that you know what to look for in case they are missing. You would have heard Ajahn Brahm say, make peace, be kind, be gentle. This is the words that sit in front of the Ajahn Brahm when he's at Nolamara. And it's not an Ajahn Brahm invention, it's a Ajahn Brahm adaptation, but it actually comes straight from the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path. So the first Noble Path says there's such a thing as suffering. Second Noble Truth says your suffering comes from your craving. Like we were saying this morning, when you have preferences, you want something more pleasant than something less pleasant. You don't get this, you get that. It appears to us as suffering. Third Noble Truth says, when your craving ends, your suffering will come to an end. Most of us then think, okay, so we just have to kill this thing called craving, and our troubles will all finish. But then the Buddha then said, fourth Noble Truth, to kill this craving, the end of craving, is through this thing called the Eightfold Path, the Noble Eightfold Path. And you don't kill craving directly, you have to do these 8 things, and eventually that leads to the end of craving, which then leads to the end of suffering. What's in the Eightfold Path? First one says right view, right understanding of this thing called reality, right understanding of this thing, the world as it is, or things as they are. The Buddha used the word like sankhara or dhamma, which practically means anything, everything, the whole universe, and whether it's the physical universe or whether it's the beyond universe, the whole lot. If you understood how it works, then your suffering will end. So right view is all-encompassing. We kind of gain a right view slowly, step by step. So like in the last 24 hours, for example, you now find that contentment is a cause for craving not to arise, for example. Just by being kind, being peaceful, being in here, happy with the breath, and all you need is just this peace with the breath. And your craving stops for that little while. So right view are little snippets like that. As you accumulate them, as you see the jigsaw pieces assemble, and one day, when you have enough clarity, you can see the whole jigsaw, and the light bulb comes, you figured it out. No point playing anymore. And that's your enlightenment moment. But to get there, the next 7 factors of the Eightfold Path. The second factor, in the past it's been translated as right thought, because third one is right speech, fourth one is right action, fifth one is right livelihood. So most people say, okay, in that case, the second factor must be to do with your first door, first source of action. If speech is second, bodily action is third, then the second one must be movement of the mind. But looking at those factors, Ajahn Brahm says, no, the right thought, not quite the right field translation for the word. So he prefers right motivation, where your thoughts and your actions originate. Because under that second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, it is described as three things: renunciation, non-ill will, and non-harming. Renunciation means not holding on to anything at all, anything that, whether it's material property, whether it's experiential, this, that, whether it's your rank in the society, whether you perceive yourself as above average people, none of those. So you let go of everything. That's the renunciation part. Non-ill will obviously means you don't want to wish harm on somebody else. You don't wish may Venerable Radha's meditation be worse than mine, or anything like that. And non-harming, taking care not to harm other beings or creatures, even if unintentionally. Ajahn Brahm takes these three factors and renames them in a way that is more meaningful to our English-speaking ears. And he calls the first one making peace. Whatever happens, whatever the outcome, whatever has arisen, whether it's pain in the body, whether it's the coffee that you got, whether it's the lunch that was presented this afternoon, however it turned out, make peace. This is the lunch that is here now. This is the pain in my body now. This is the wound in my heart now. This is the temperature in the hall now. We make peace. Accept and not quarrel with it. And that's Ajahn Brahm's English word translation for the Pali word renunciation. Being kind is Ajahn's adaptation of not harming. Instead of just not harming, we add a little layer that says we actually want to be kind and compassionate. And the third one, in Pali, it says non-harming. And Ajahn says, okay, let's take that as being gentle. So, make peace, be kind, and be gentle. And that would be the motivation, the intentions behind all your speech, your actions, your livelihood. Livelihood is number 5. Number 6, right strivings, or right, I suppose you can call it right striving, right? Number 7, right mindfulness. Number 8, right meditation. So Ajahn Brahm says factor number 2 quite often is neglected, ignored, overlooked. But you should take factor number 2, being kind, being gentle, making peace, and carry that right through to the end. In all these next 6 factors, whether it's your speech, whether it's your actions, whether it's your livelihood, whether it's your mindfulness, whether it's your meditation, you take making peace, being kind, being gentle, all the way through, which is why I too have been conditioned to guide our meditation sits in the same way. Always put in lots of kindness, lots of gentleness. Comes straight from the Buddha's teachings, not an Ajahn Brahm creation or Radha creation or anything like that. So that's the second factor of the Eightfold Path. Now, back to this afternoon's sit, the 4 o'clock sit. Anybody want to make any comments, questions? Yes. Microphone, yes.
Words are not enough to express my gratitude. And also, have to use words to express my thanks, because your message this afternoon really gave me the GPS as to how to find my meditation. Because previously, I was able to drop into peaceful state quite easily, but didn't quite know the know-how. It's like every one of us has been born with good ingredients, but you're like a master chef. Yeah, you gave the recipe, so we can make some wonderful 5-star dishes. At some point, so this enormous joy, happiness arose, and I started to feel my heart was like racing very fast. And then the joy kept building and building. And then I didn't really know how to handle the intensity. It's like how much I can take. And then this little universe was like going to explode. And
wow.
Certain spot, even those people who hurt me or unknowingly did something harmful to me appeared, but I was able to hug them and then to thank them. Even, the so-called enemies became like my helpers. Because without them, I couldn't have found the path. And then everything became so positive. And then these tears of joy just started to roll from my face. And this state lasted so long, even after getting out of meditation and seeing everyone. It's like the whole world has some light. I don't know if the words are good enough to describe. I'm just using words to describe as much as possible as to how I feel. So it's like in this state, there's no judgment. Judgment naturally fades away. So there's no such thing as good or bad, because judgment fades away. And then it's almost like I want to embrace and want to hug. And I want to check with you, if it happens, is it normal, or how do you work with the intensity of this joy or bliss or super happiness? I don't know how to describe. But it's very nice. Thank you.
Wow. At moments like this, right? I recall a conversation I had with Ajahn Brahm. At that time, one person from the Vietnamese community came up to Ajahn and said, Ajahn, there's this piece of land, very nice, very big, very beautiful, with a lake in the middle. But it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to this other rich guy in the community, in our community. I'm trying to persuade him to give it to you, because he says he wants it to be used for the good. Then Ajahn Brahm showed me the real estate brochure. What do you think? So I went, sat down with it overnight and had ideas. Well, we could have another monastery, and another retreat center. Perhaps we have accommodation for old monks with a kitchen and bathrooms attached. And then we could have a park for day visitors, and we could have another dining hall. So I went back to Ajahn and said, well, here's my ideas. And we could get people who are practitioners and come and invest in this, buy timeshare apartments for 10 years, 20 years. Not so much that they can give it to their children, but to keep it within the Buddhist practitioners so that they can enjoy and really make use of this space. And then Ajahn looked at me and says, I'm not really keen. And then I asked Ajahn, exactly what are your thoughts? What's your feel about? Then he says, when he was a young monk, and I presume this was either when he was still in Thailand or just after he landed in Perth, he says he had a dream or an ambition. He would build a monastery here in Perth for the monks. And when that's established, he would build a monastery for the nuns. And then, at that same time, BSWA was quite established. I will build a meditation center for our supporters, which is how Jhana Grove came to be. And I will also have a city temple, which is what Nola Mara is, so that the lay people in town can access the teachings without having to travel 1 hour south here. And in Ajahn mind, his ambition is fulfilled. He has done the 4 big things in his life. And of course, people still come to Ajahn and say, Ajahn, we are building this thing in Newbury, in Victoria, and then others will say, Ajahn, we have this piece of land here, this piece of monastery here that nobody, and then somebody wants to build something in Albany and stuff. But in Ajahn mind, the 4 big things that he wanted to do in his life has been done. And what he didn't say, and what I kind of extrapolated, was that he used to describe this. Ajahn Chah told him, he said, you monks are so lucky. Why? The mango plantation have been planted, all the trees are here, the orchard is here. All you have to do is just sit down, be still, hold your hand out, and the mango will come to you. So, if I may ask you, please let Ajahn Brahm know that you have got one of his mangoes. Because I haven't got it yet. But so, to answer your question, I can only answer theoretically. What to do when it comes to you, when you're the lucky one, and yeah. Oh, what I have heard Ajahn Brahm say, sometimes the light appears so bright, you think you're going to go blind. This bliss is so intense, and you think your heart will burst. But be assured, you will survive. The way Ajahn described it, he says it's like, wow, these traumatic events that happens to people, except it's not a negative trauma, it's a positive trauma. It will affect you and it will change your life expectations, your view of the world. It will stick in there for a long, long time. Not forever. Everything is anicca, everything is impermanent. But it will stick in there for a long, long time. And in addition to that, human nature, craving, you're going to crave for it and you want it again. And that craving will block it from coming again. And naturally, you will struggle with it for a little while more before it comes and visits you again. And that's fine, just how it is. So, congratulations, very good. Gives the rest of us here in the room a bit more hope. Last year, okay, I was wondering whether I should tell you these things, but because you guys are so inspired and so diligent, sometimes we monks hear these stories and we wonder whether we should tell you, because we ourselves feel envious and we ourselves say, I want it too, and how come I didn't get it? And so in telling you, there's a risk that you would crave for it. On the other hand, Ajahn Brahm is a teacher with an open hand. He tells you all that the Buddha told him. He doesn't hold back and say, this is a secret transmission only to my selected disciples. Last year, on Katina Day, there was a bunch of retreatants here. And this was the last day. They were here for the 9 days leading up to the Katina ceremony, and they were going to go home the next day. Is it Katina Day? Or, sorry, Entry to Rains Day. Entry to Rains Day in July. And this lady decided, all right, this is the last night, what do we do? The weather outside was fine, it was very nice in May, a little cold. So she took her 2 or 3 blankets, went out there and sat at the stupa, and went inside. And just stayed inside for the whole night. In May weather, in July weather, start of winter. Until the next day, she missed breakfast, and they were trying to tell her, come, we are having a ceremony in Bodhi Jhana, the other side. And she couldn't come out, they couldn't wake her. She was inside her cave. So what next? One of the organizers went over to Ajahn Brahm. Ajahn Brahm, there's this person at the stupa. And Ajahn's advice back then was, this person is in a very nice place. If you have anything harsh, anything loud and jarring, the person will stay inside the cave, because that's the nicest place to hang out. You have to coax the person out. Would you like to come out? Ajahn Brahm is calling you. Then the person came out with the same kind of experience, totally relaxed, totally blissed out. And then you wonder, for the rest of us, how did that bliss come about? Just sitting down, breathing. Again, explaining this to you in theory, from what I've heard from Ajahn, when you go inside that cave, the rest of the body lost to you. It's just you and the breath is quite insubstantial. It's just a very light thing, right? It's just movement of the... And it's not actually, you're not actually looking at the breath per se, you're looking at the mind's experience of the breath. It's just like, you think you hear me now, words from my brain, mind, comes to the throat, tongue, voice box, travels through the air to your eardrums, and then from your eardrums onwards, it goes through some neural network and gets translated into this thing called English words, and you understand, translate them again into meaning. And it's just all signals to the mind. So likewise, when you're sitting there, you've simplified all the inputs down to just in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. In effect, the mind is watching itself. The mind, sidetrack a little bit. In our Western understanding of things, if I put a TV screen here and I play a movie, you would say the movie is one thing, the TV screen is a separate thing. One is the software, one's the hardware. The Buddha says our mind and our thought is one thing. When the thought is not there, the mind is not there. When you're not conscious, there's no mind. When you're conscious, you have to be conscious about something, the thing you're observing, and then the mind exists. What you have experienced is the mind watching itself, feeling happy from the joy, from the happiness, from the kindness, and then recognizing that happiness and kindness, it gets more happy, and it sees itself being happy. It's a bit like this. A mother with a newborn baby carries a baby up and says, "Goo, goo, 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 goo." And the baby laughs, and the mother gets happy. The mother goes on to say, "Ah," and the baby laughs again. And this feedback keeps going on back and forth, making both of them happy. But in this case, it's the mind watching itself, getting happier and happier and happier. The mind will not be overloaded, will not short circuit, not to worry at all. Go on, indulge.
Thank you very much, Ajahn.
That's what I've heard Ajahn explain. Yeah. Okay, there you have it. I'm not sure what to do next. We've just heard such an inspiring story. Incidentally, I heard one other inspiring story just before I entered the hall. Another beautiful experience. So, it just goes to prove it is possible. There is this thing called bliss better than all worldly pleasures. I'm sure you agree, no ice cream or coffee can beat what you have just felt, right? Yeah, that is what is in store in this little place called Jhana Grove. Having just to learn how to sit quietly enough, watching only a very simple object, the breath, and you beautify that object with a lot of kindness and joy. And you hold out your hand and wait. Can't force it. The mind settles down by itself, just as you have experienced in the last 24 hours. It's up to the mind to decide when it wants to settle down. It's not up to us to decide, sit. You only provide a safe environment, provide a soft cushion, and say, "Would you like to sit?" And you wait. You coax, comes near, just like having a little kitten. "Come, kitten, sit here." If you try and catch a kitten, sit. As soon as you let go, the kitten will run. But if you make it really the softest part of the room, and the kitten trusts you enough, and know that there's warmth and kindness here, the kitten will come all by itself, in due course, not at our choosing. And when that happens, happiness beyond what you normally experience, and then when you get that, you can understand how the Buddha on his enlightenment night comes out from that blissful state and declare life is suffering. All this menial stuff that we hanker for and crave for, too much trouble. You'd rather just let it all go and be in peace. But you can also understand, after that night, I think after a week after that night, the Buddha tells the story. He says, all right, so I've seen this. How do I teach this? Who's going to understand? And you can understand why he asked that question. It's beyond our everyday logic. It's beyond what we think the meaning of life is. It's beyond all that we hanker for. And then he says, all right, there are those with little dust in their eyes, those who might come to Jhana Grove and allow themselves to be brainwashed. And hopefully be able to see a glimmer of where the path leads, and realize that there is such a thing, end of suffering. Yeah. You also know, you'll also be noticing a lot of things that we've done in the last 24 hours that points to a lot of unexplored parts of our minds, how it works, how we think it works, but then you discover it's not quite how it works. How we crave for stuff, we want stuff, and yet those are not the things that give us peace. And yet, when we create the conditions for peace, the contentment comes, and we no longer want those stuff. So a lot of it is counterintuitive, and a lot of it is to be experienced. It's hard to explain this to the next person who hasn't come across an inspiring teacher like Ajahn Brahm, or hasn't come across enough, this kind of stuff. Okay, any other questions? Yes. No? Yes, over there.
Thank you, Venerable. You mentioned about the Eightfold Path.
Yes.
And in my understanding, the right view is essential for all the rest to come in place, right? With right view, I can have right intention, right speech, right action, right effort, etc., etc. If I don't have right view, intentions will be wrong, my actions will be wrong, etc., etc. And the tricky thing is that we are conditioned with our wrong view, and to break this pattern of the wrong view is the challenging thing. And even you can say meditation will help you, but you can meditate for years.
Yes.
Keeping your view.
Yes, that is true.
Yes.
So, okay. A right view is not a binary yes and no thing. It's not so much I've got right view today and I didn't have right view, I had wrong view yesterday. Right view is an incremental thing. You keep adding to it, adding to it, adding to it, adding to it. So what you said was right in that you first need to hear such a thing as Eightfold Path before you even start embarking on that journey. So that bit of right view is essential to start. But you will not get the whole jigsaw picture until the day you actually see it. And when you see that picture, that too is the right view, the bigger right view. So we keep collecting our jigsaw pieces and we keep assembling them. And as we assemble them, you can start seeing the picture coming to start appearing, right? So one of the things that Ajahn Brahmali keeps repeating in this last 1 year is the idea of associating with wise people, associating with good people. just as you've pointed out, you can keep sitting in meditation, and if somebody tells you, well, focus on the breath, concentrate on the breath, and that's all you did, without hearing the background stories that we've been discussing, that you've been hearing from Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahmali, without understanding that the end goal of meditation is to see that big picture. And my understanding also is, a lot of times we read suttas, we hear Dhamma talks, the idea is you're given another few pieces of the jigsaw, you can see its color and shape, and you say, oh, okay, this green piece, this must be the grass on the bottom right or bottom left, it's a corner, it's a frame, end piece, it's not an in-between piece. So you build up these pieces, okay, you need to have right speech, not have harsh speech, not to have lying, not to have gossiping, not to have idle speech. Why? Because too much talking interferes with your peace. Too much lying and too much arguing definitely interferes with your peace. I remember when I was a young Anagarika here in Bodhinyana, I used to quarrel with one other person. And every time we have one bad episode, I couldn't meditate for 3 days. And all I needed was 3 bad conversations a week, and that was the end of my meditation. But then now you understand, right speech adds to your right view. You now understand peace comes from right speech. It's one of the contributing factors. So you assemble your right speech, your right view slowly, day by day, experience by experience, teaching by teaching, Dhamma talk by Dhamma talk. Yeah? Yeah. Yes, over here, in front.
I'm just curious about what you say with the big picture, and I think at the moment it's one of those ones where I am not concerning myself with it too much, and I have tried to, I don't even know if I want to call it like a blissful euphoria. It was more just a quiet contentedness that was really just a matter of feeling like satiated in every sense of the word. And I'm someone who's very intellectually looking to explore every avenue and find out why. And it's just curious to me that that came at a time when, how can I say that, I was having a lot of up and downs emotionally, but even the highs that I was feeling in terms of meeting new people and feeling like I was clicking and intellectually stimulated was getting quite exhausting. And it's kind of curious as well, because I've heard about these bliss states, and I don't want to compare too much of mine to others. But at the same time, I've also heard monks say that sometimes they don't want to get too close to those bliss states because there's other reasons, or they want to go in a different direction, that it might cloud their judgment in terms of just purely being in the state for the ecstasy rather than some kind of bigger meaning. And it's just curious as to, is there a bigger meaning? Is the real thing? It's,
okay.
you know.
I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
So here's what I understand from my teachers. You know, one story that Ajahn Brahm tells is regarding what people experience when they have a near-death experience. They are on an operating table, and then suddenly the heart stops, and then they float up above the operating table, they look down, they can see, that's my body. And then, that's the doctor's opening up my intestines just like he said he would. And then after that, the heart, and then you can see they're all panicking because the heart stopped, they're trying to restart the heart. And meanwhile, he looks behind and he goes through this tunnel and has an experience on the other side, bright white light and all that. And apparently the reports, he collects them, and he listens to what they say, It says, all right, if you're a Catholic, a good chance when you get to the other side and you see that bright light, you see this figure, and you will identify that figure as Mother Mary. If you're a straightforward Christian, of course, then you'll see Jesus. And then if you're a Mahayana Buddhist, you would see Kuan Yin, all compassionate. And if you don't believe in any of those, you will probably meet Uncle George. And Ajahn explanation of that is, you kind of expect to see what you see what you kind of expect to see. If you have an understanding, view that there is no God, you will meet Uncle George. If your understanding is Mother Mary is going to be waiting for me on the other side, you will see Mother Mary. You'll see an outline, but your perception will form interpretation and meaning to what you think you saw. Likewise, when you go into these states and you experience those out-of-the-world experiences, we will all interpret it differently. We will say, oh, well, yeah, bright white light, oneness with the universe, or oneness with God, whatever your belief system was up to then, that's what you will see. The Buddha says, well, yeah, you can see all that, but Buddha claims to have seen further and see that these are all aberrations of the perception based on your beliefs. It's not a pure observation. It's not an observation that is uncolored by your expectations. Whereas the Buddhist idea of meditation is you come to a point where you are fed up with the world, you make peace, you renounce. When you get there, you see these things. Yes, it's very exciting. You feel the elation. But even then, you don't pick it up. You leave it there. And you see all these, for example, what I was saying the other day, what the movie makers, they try and pull your heartstrings and they try and jerk you up and down and make you excited and make you angry and enraged and then make you feel disappointed that the hero didn't get the girl. Whereas if you can stand far apart enough and see that, you understand the experience rather than be swung around thrown around by the waves. So that's where Ajahn Brahm and Ajahn Brahmali would say, understand what the Buddha said. You may believe it, you may not believe it, but at least hear it once. When the experience comes to you, judge for yourself. Does this experience match what the Buddha described? If it does, it confirms your confidence. It's just like what you have done in the last 24 hours. Ajahn Brahm says, what holds your attention there is not willpower, but it's kindness. If you experienced it, yeah, that makes sense. But if you haven't experienced it yet, it's just what Ajahn Brahm said. Somebody said.
Adding on to that as well, I'm just curious if, because it seems to me the case that I've had altered states of consciousness where I felt like I was looking through a fourth person perspective, which means I was seeing from my own perspective, and the person that I was with at the time, I was able to see through hers as well. And we decided to sit in other rooms, and we were testing to see if we could guess how many fingers each other was holding up in the other room, and we were getting it every time because we were having this weird perceptual thing. And it's just a bizarre thing that I've never tried to recreate, because I feel like trying to recreate it, and I wouldn't actually experience or understand the experience well enough because I'm too close up to it, instead of developing my practice further. And actually, because this is before I adopted a proper Buddhist practice. But
Yeah.
it's just, I feel like there's an issue with, because I feel like I've progressed further and faster than maybe I should have, and it feels a bit like sometimes I've had insights that I haven't been able to hold on to because I haven't had the process of integrating them. So it's kind of looking at some of the monks saying that these bliss states are, you know, I think they can definitely be motivation, but also not to get.
Yeah. So I agree with all that you've said. I mean, these discussions are out there on the internet, and we've seen it. I've seen it. And there's always arguments back and forth to say that the bliss is dangerous, it will pull you to the wrong path. And it's possible if you are not well supported by a good teacher. If you are supported by a good teacher who has actually been there and done that and seen that, and he has been supported by a good teacher and he understands what's going on, then you're in good company.
I'm just kind of surprised because, like I said, this was before I found any system, and it's just. I think.
Yeah. So I'm the wrong
yeah.
person to speak to, because I am not there.
Yeah. No, I'm just more saying that it's.
I don't want to take up the other 39 people's time by prolonging this theoretical discussion, but I will tell you something else. There have been people, such as yourselves, who have looked for therapy to try and sort out what was this thing that I just experienced. And they may have go 1-2 years looking for therapists who couldn't explain anything, and eventually they come across, why don't you go and see Ajahn Brahm? And they come to see Ajahn Brahm and they tell their story. And then Ajahn Brahm will say, well, when you were there, did you also see this? And did you experience that? And this is, yes, exactly. And then they realize they've both seen the same thing before. And it's not something I can tell you about. As the suttas recommend, associate with the wise. Find out what they know. I can't help you anymore on this one.
I don't think so either. It just goes back to that constant, like.
Yeah, I can see it's troubling you.
I mean,
by all means, look for the right person to answer these questions.
There is also a sense of satisfaction there, though, as well, because I've seen it go in a completely horrible direction, and it's kind of like, you know, the fact that I've been able to come out the other side instead of get trapped. It's,
Very good. Any other questions? Any other comments? Yeah, so, yes.
What I find very interesting is it not with everything that is it not with everything, but it's a matter of observing. So whether it's a state of bliss or it's pain that we're experiencing, when we talk about the cravings or aversion that we create towards something, so does the state really matter that we experience?
I guess the way Ajahn explains it is that these bliss states is an indication of the amount of letting go, amount of not complaining, the amount of contentment. So you kind of sink into it. The more peaceful you are, the more contented you are. When you're contented and peaceful, naturally the mind will stop moving. It's got nothing to do when it's contented. It's when it's unhappy that it has got lots of things to fix. So the happiness or the bliss is sort of like an indicator rather than the thing that you aim for. The thing that you actually aim for is the contentment. And again, contentment, if you aim for it and you don't get it and you get frustrated, then obviously that aiming is a hindrance. So it's a bit of a catch-22, and you got to kind of work to it very gently. Calm cat, here's a nice place. Why don't you come sit here? And your mind comes and sit here. If the mind finds it nice and peaceful, the mind will sit longer. And after a while, the mind will be still. And it will watch itself and it will feel happier, watch itself and feel happier. And then you're pulled in, not by your own will, it's just you're pulled in by the happiness. Yeah. That's how I understand it.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So, all right, it's almost 8. We want that bliss, right? It's, yeah. So yes, you kind of know the conundrum about these things. We hear all the wonderful stories and we want them, and we take the time to sit down hours upon hours on the cushion and why it's not here yet? And especially if you have had one before, it's like, why can't I get it again? What am I doing wrong? And Ajahn will tell you, the fact that you're doing, it's wrong. You shouldn't be doing. You should just be sitting there enjoying, doing nothing doing. So as you're sitting there, let's sink into it. We shall sink into it as well. Oh yeah, if you want to stretch a bit or use the toilet, please go ahead. We'll have a few minutes. But otherwise, you can get into the space slowly. So the Buddha described this thing called the Brahma Viharas. Literally translated, it means where the gods hang out. The gods' abode, Brahma, the god, Vihara, where they hang out. And what are the 4 Brahma Viharas? Where are these 4 places that the gods hang out? And it's not a particular heaven, it's not a particular place. It's described as 4 moods or feelings. Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha. Loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Loving kindness, I think most of you know, is extending friendship to everyone, everybody. Having this shared feeling of well-being, of happiness, that you want the other person to be happy, you want yourself to be happy, you want to have a good relationship. Just like how you'd feel if you're hanging out with your best friend. And the second one, compassion, is actually, to me anyway, as it feels like metta, except with a slightly different flavor. The flavor being, the other person is suffering, is maybe in a bit of trouble, and now this friendship is colored by a slight heaviness. May you be well. May you recover from your illness. May your pain go away. May your troubles be gone. So it has a slight different flavor, but along the same line of still wishing well towards the other person. The third one, mudita, is, you could call it the opposite of compassion. Now, the other person that you're looking at has done well. So it might be a person, say, your classmate, your child, your brother, aced his GCE exams or top of his class in his university, became the top scorer in the Australian footies or something. And you say, yes, that's my brother, or that's my sister. And you share the joy of the other person's success and achievements. It is still very much like metta, friendship, but now you're tapping on the other person's efforts, the other person's achievements. You didn't have to do the work, but you share the joy. And the fourth Brahma Vihara, the fourth abode for the gods, upekkha, equanimity. Ajahn Brahm thinks the word equanimity is too complicated for easy understanding or even for pronunciation. And he says, why don't you just use the word contentment? The way I understand upekkha is this. Something good happens, something bad happens. A friend that used to be a friend is no longer a friend. A person who used to be cooperative now has and cheerful has now become depressed and self-centered. But if you could understand why, or even if you couldn't understand why, but if you can accept that people change and you accept that situations change, and you're at peace with that change, you're not pushed up and down by the waves, you can remain at peace and aloof. Not that you don't have compassion, not that you don't care, but you understand how things have come to be, and therefore am able to accept it. So these are the four places that you can hang out in terms of your mood. And they're all good. They are considerate places that will lead to contentment eventually. All these four moods do not carry any kind of envy, jealousy, ill will, or sadness or anger. They all lead to peaceful states. So even though we have heard some stories of people, how come they've got special experiences at 4 p.m. and I did. The thing that you might want to try and develop this now, this idea that somebody here has managed to collect a mango. That Ajahn Brahm's efforts, setting all this place up, all the fundraising, all the strife with the contractors, has produced another fruit. And you might think, may I too one day taste that fruit. And you can rejoice in other people's achievements. And you can have the upekkha, the contentment, to know that you are also on the path. You're also putting in the right conditions. If you plant the mango seed and you water it, and you keep the pests out, temperature is right, sooner or later your mango tree will also fruit. So with that in mind, we bring our sense perception inwards. You now know or remember Ajahn's favorite phrase, making peace, being kind, being gentle. As you experience all the sensations in your body, even the uncomfortable ones, making peace, being kind, being gentle. And as you're more familiar with your own body and your mind, as your sensitivity increases, you can decide which discomfort is calling out for attention first. And there, you now pack the breath with peace, kindness, and gentleness. And bring that through the breath to those discomforts. At some point, I would suggest attending to the abdominal area and the upper torso area. To let go of any habitual tightness. Not by force, but by making peace, being gentle, being kind. And as you do that, remember to collect your rewards. What is that? The ease that the breath goes in and out, the pleasure that the breath gets when it flows in, flows out. Noticing these little pleasures makes this space ever more comfortable, ever more enticing. Now, I'm guessing some of you might be tempted to quickly rush through all this and get to the bliss. My suggestion, take your time. Take your time to put the body at ease. To make sure the neck muscle, the jaw muscles, the eyeballs, the forehead, all these bits tends to tense up when we have big discussions. the discussions, when there's a lot of back and forth, creates tension and tiredness. A side point, now that you're experiencing this directly, the Buddha also pointed out a lot of our conversations are actually quite pointless. When you're engaging, talking about wars in other countries, governments, robbers, accidental deaths, if you're not going to do anything about it, and if I'm not going to do anything about it, then trying to put one argument ahead of another not only is it pointless, but it disturbs this meditation. And then you wonder how much of our social media feed is of this nature. And now that you know, when we sit down, we have to clean up this mess, you'd be more careful what you consume and put into the headspace. Spend as much time as you need to give yourself comfort, to give yourself ease and peace and contentment. Let the body tell you when it's ready to move on. Don't let the mind and the craving in the mind rush through this process. And then when the body is quite settled, allow the mind to also take a short rest, to indulge in the bliss and the pleasure of the breath. And as you're enjoying the breath, the rest of the body seems to fall away. And perhaps you might say, since I'm not using my hands, I can switch them off. Not using the legs. Switch those off too. Then we can go back to the breath. Just indulge, hang out. Notice the silence and the stillness. And to appreciate it. And as you settle more into the peace, you might find that space, the private space for two, the mind and the breath. Allow your mind to be drawn in completely into the experience of the breath. Completely experiencing the gentleness and the kindness. If the mind feels dull or restless, remember the breath can always bring another dose of kindness and joy.